Thank you, Amanda. Much appreciated. I also want to encourage you to come to Sunday morning Bible study. I may be a bit biased, but it is the Super Bowl of Bible studies. The Super Bowl of Bible studies. We have great teachers, we have great discussions, and I don't know why you're not there. I know many of you are, but we've got room for more, and we just want to encourage you to come and be a part of that discussion every Sunday morning. Speaking of Super Bowls, Chiefs fans. Oh, just a couple. Wow. Philly fans? Nobody's watching? Do we know today's the Super Bowl? Okay. All right. Just checking. So if we've not met, my name is Daryl, and I'm one of the pastors here. And every time I get up here, which is not very often, and there's a reason for that, I'm fourth on the depth chart on preaching. So if I'm up here, you know a lot of people said, I can't do that today. So here I am. I just want to set the expectation. Let's make sure that I don't disappoint anybody there. But probably a better reason why you don't see me down here very often is I'm on the other end of the hall, down the hall, other end of the building, and being a part of our student ministry on a Sunday morning. It's called The Street. But lately, it seems like my job at the other end of the building has been moving buckets. If you notice the buckets everywhere in the building, especially on that end, boy, we are trying to catch some water leaks here. So whoever designed flat roofs, boy, no good. No good. As a matter of fact, I got a text from Michelle this past week, and she was saying, boy, we've got leaks everywhere. What do I do? And I said, well, there's buckets. Get the buckets out. So she's getting the buckets out, and she says, we don't have enough buckets. I said, okay. The only thing I got for you is you got to climb on the roof and you got to rake the water off. There was a pause in the texting. She stopped texting me. All of a sudden, I get the text back saying, I'm not feeling very good, going home. Okay, got it. Had to run to the store and buy some more buckets. So there we go. Now, last series that Rev Kev has preached to us and gave us a fantastic overview of the letters of Peter. And the last couple of weeks, he touched upon our identity. And I know that resonated with a few of you. And I agree that it is a absolutely foundational topic. So I'm going to continue to talk about identity this morning, and I want to add to that discussion on identity and to show that it's inextricably linked to our purpose. So we're going to talk about our identity and our purpose this morning. Because when we do not know who we are, and when we do not know what we are to do, it leads to confusion, it leads to conflict, and it just leads to problems in our life. The result can be spiritual, can be emotional, can even be physical distress. And that may be a reason why we struggle to live lives of joy, of peace, and of hope. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't know who I am? Have you ever heard anyone tell you they don't know what God's will is for their life? Have you ever heard anyone say, I don't know what to do with my life? Have you ever said that to anyone or said it to yourself? I see a lot of head shaking. I think we all have. Well, I've got some good news this morning because we're going to answer those questions. So you never have to ask that question again. And when you hear somebody say or ask that question, you are going to have an answer if I do what I hope to do this morning. So now that I have your attention, let's jump in, because two fundamental questions to life, absolutely foundational. And you're going to see those two questions on the back of your bulletin. So those two questions are, who am I? Or, said another way, what is my identity? And then the second question is what am I to do? Or, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And without knowing the answers to those two questions, thoughts creep into our heads. Not only are we battling the enemy, but we're battling our own flesh, and those want to answer those questions. So we ask ourselves, I am, and then there's a fill in the blank. Now, those two that I've just mentioned you that wants to answer those questions, unfortunately, we come up with answers like, I am unlovable. I am worthless. I am a mistake. I think we've all heard those. I think we've heard people make those types of statements. And then what happens is that the death spiral begins. And that death spiral could be figurative or literal, to shoot straight. Because what happens is when I think of myself that way, when you think of yourself that way, it's harder to love God. It's harder to love one another. And then we end up making decisions that hurt ourselves and hurt others. So this is hopefully setting the stage to why I think the answers to these two questions are probably the most too important to answer in our life. Let's get to some answers. And so where do we go? First question again, who am I? And we're going to start in the beginning. Genesis chapter 1. Verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. I know that we have talked this passage a number of times. I know that there have been sermons on this, but I want us to just pause for a moment and think about the importance of what this means, because we are made in the image of God, just as it says in the creation account. Everyone here was born in the image of God. So what does that mean? Is that we were created, we were formed, we were built by God, with God, God in us. Think about that. We are made to resemble or reflect God's character, God's attributes. We're made, every one of us are made that way. And I think that this is a reason why we do what we do when it comes to our desires, both good and bad. Because two of our desires are to be fully loved and to be fully known. Well, when you look at our God, you look at the Trinity, that's self-existence within that Trinity. And if we are created in their image, then we have that same desire, which is a beautiful, beautiful one to have if we treat it the right way. We have these desires whether we want to acknowledge them or not. And that's why having these answers to these questions are so important. And here's another part of this. We are made in his image. We are fully loved and fully known by him. Now, that statement right there scares me to death. fully loved and fully known by Him, and we are still accepted. And we are still accepted. So in God's economy here, so we are all made in image, but it gets better. It gets even better because there's so much more, because those of us that have chosen to follow Christ, we've made that decision to follow Him, gives us the second part of our answer to who am I? Let's read 1 John chapter 3. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know Him. Dear friends, know we are children of God. Know we are children of God. So what does John tell us? What does that mean for us? It means that we are loved. It means that we are valued. And it means we are defended. Those songs that we sang before I came up here, what did we sing about? That. And it is true because of what God has said, and it is true because of what God has done. So let's look at what God has said. So in Exodus 34, verses 6 through 8, and he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generations. Moses bowed down and worshiped. I realize this is difficult, this idea of identity, of who am I in God. I realize it because we don't have earthly references. Many of us do not have earthly references. And we've talked about this before as well. Rev Kev's talked about it a number of times. You know, we want you to believe we have a good father, but you did not have a good father. We tell you that we are children of God, but you've been a part of a family that didn't act like a family, did not act like a godly family. So we have these reference points that we try to cling to and hang on to. But sometimes it's really hard. And really all I can say, it's not about your thoughts. It's not about your experiences. It's not about your emotions. It's about what God says. It's about what God has done and is doing. And it's about you being created in His image and being a child of His. In one word, it's about truth. Not the lies that we are told and that we tell ourselves. It's about the truth. It's about what God says. And with that brings us to some answers for our second question. What am I to do? And this is also a two-part answer, but we have to know who we are before we can know what to do. Genesis 1, we're going back to the beginning. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all of the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the earth. So yes, what does God say? We are made in His image to do what? To rule. Now, I know we don't really talk a lot about that in that way. But just because the fall happened in the 2 chapters later in Genesis, this did not go away. We are still meant to rule with God. And this is where preaching gets really difficult for me, is because there's just so much to talk about when it comes to that. We make a simple statement and then we move on, but that's a loaded statement, and I know that. Anytime you want to talk about anything that I say, please let me know, and I'll be happy to do that. But I've got to move past that. I just want you to just trust me here and say, we are meant to rule with God. We are supposed to take care of His creation, take care of our world. We are meant to do that. We were created to do that. Now, here's the second part. So we are meant to rule with God, and here's the second part. And if you attended our Bible study, you will recognize this word. And this word is reclaim. So the two-part answer to the question, what are we to do? We are to rule, and we are to reclaim. Said in a different way, it is that we are to be a witness. We are to be a witness. We are to be witnesses in order to reclaim God's creation back to Him. There's only one problem that I have, is that I'm not a fan of the word witness. And the reason that I'm not a fan of that is because of what it means to us today. The term witness, so what do you think of when witness comes to mind? I'm sitting on the stand, I put my hand on the Bible, and I swear to tell the truth. Okay? That's a small part. But the witness that is referred to here in the Bible and what Jesus expects of us is not passive. We're just not recounting something that might have happened. We are talking about being a witness. We are talking about being Christ-like, words and ways. What Christ says and what Christ does. And it has to be the total package. It's about attitude and it's about actions. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about being a witness. Acts 22, starting in verse 14. Then he said, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know His will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from His mouth. And what we're doing is we're reading what Paul is saying about himself in the book of Acts. And you will be His witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. So we have a number of verses, and we've talked about many of them on many occasions. But hasn't Jesus asked to do the very same thing that God and Jesus asked Paul to do? To be His witness. Haven't we all, those of us that have chosen to follow Christ, haven't we all had our Damascus Road experience? That's what happened with Paul. And Jesus said, you will be my witness. And we can spend hours recalling what Paul did as an apostle to the Gentiles. So this is about words and ways when we talk about being a witness. So hopefully we've got some answers. Okay? Who am I? I'm an image bearer. I was created in the image of God, and I bear His image. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. And what am I to do? What's my purpose? I'm supposed to rule with God, His creation, and I'm supposed to be a witness. And I'm to be a witness to reclaim His creation back to Him. So I'm sure you've noticed by now, I seem to ask a lot of questions. Normally to myself, but I guess I would have to say they're rhetorical to you, but I'd much prefer they weren't be rhetorical, because I want you to answer those questions as well. But I'm going to ask some more. All right? And this is where I want to gently encourage and challenge at the same time, because we have a really hard time believing what we just talked about, don't we? We have a very difficult time believing what I just said. So I sat back and I tried to figure out, why is that the case? Why do we have such a hard time believing this? So let me offer a couple of suggestions. And the first one is, I think it's simple. I think we fear being hurt. And I know that comes in many different forms and fashions in many different ways. But I believe we just fear being hurt because we've all been hurt so many times. And because we've been hurt time and time again, what we do then is we question God's goodness. So I'm hurt, and that leads me to question God's goodness. And then, at best, we doubt him, and at worst, we don't think he's good at all. And we have to go back again to the garden to understand why that's the case, because I think this is also key to everything that we've been talking about up until this point. So we look at Genesis 3, verse 6. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So what's the lesson from that? If you've read the entire account and you know that's the fall, that what we call the fall, in a very simple way, what did we do? We chose our way over God's way. We chose our wisdom over God's wisdom. And when we do that, it's never good. It is never good, which leads to our hurt. And unfortunately, because of the way we have done, and it's because of what we've chosen, we hurt ourselves, and then who do we blame? We blame God. So now you've got another death spiral going on what we end up believing and thinking and doing. So here's another question. And I think this is a pivotal question. Can we do better? Can we do better? Now, if I'm sitting where you're sitting and somebody just said that to me, I'm going to say, do better at what? Okay, that's a good question, if that popped into your head. Can we do better? And I say we can. And here's the two things I want to bring to you. I believe that we can do better believing and battling. So, two words. I believe we can do better believing and battling. So what am I talking about? Believing we really do bear God's image. Believing we do bear God's image. Believing that we are truly a child of God. And if we believe those, then we can start to believe that we really do play a role in ruling God's creation with him. And then we can truly believe that we have a specific purpose in God's creation, which is what we've been talking about, is being a witness. Now the battling part. We can do a better job of battling our flesh, battling the doubts, battling the lies that we allow into our head. And then we can do a better job of just simply battling the enemy. I think we can do a better job at that. I know that's a lot. I know I just hammered you all with quite a bit there. So just take a breath. You know when you listen to the podcast and they have that 15 seconds of music that just lets you think about something else? That's what we're doing right now. Let the music play in your head. Hopefully it's not circus music. And just take a breath, because I want to focus in. I want to focus in on our purpose, on what it means to be a witness. So hopefully everyone can agree to some level that our purpose, our God-given purpose in this life is to be a witness. Yes? All right, I got enough head shakes. Thank you. All right. If I believe God is good, and I am who he says I am, I have a chance at being a better witness. I have a chance at being a better witness. So, what am I supposed to be doing as a witness? And what does that look like? I want to make this as practical as possible. And I'm going to do that by offering a different perspective, because it's probably not a different perspective. There have been countless messages, sermons, books written on what it means to be a witness. So like I said, what I'm about to offer is probably not new, but I'm hoping that it will stick, at least for a day or two. And so what's my perspective? To share that and to do that, I've got to start off with another passage. Romans 12, verse 4. For just as each of you has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Now, if you remember Romans 12, the previous verses are talking about the will of God and transformation, and then the following verses after that talk about what we are to do, right? But this particular set of verses are very important for you to consider. Take a hard look at what Paul is saying. What is he saying? He's saying that we, as a body of believers, belong to one another. Belong to one another. I think Paul has given us a key truth about the church and how we are supposed to think of ourselves as one in order to be witnesses. But I'm going to share that I don't know if I think this way. I don't know if I've thought about being a witness requires me to consider you. Have you? I don't know. Simply, if we confess that we follow Jesus, then we make this kind of commitment to the church. You can't do one without the other by what I read in Romans. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the church? What does that mean for Village Church? And this is the perspective that I'd like for us to consider today. This place, this body, I'm not necessarily talking about the walls. I'm not talking about the brick and mortar. I'm talking about this body, us. Us. Everything we do here is to prepare you and support being a witness. Think about that. What we do here, we educate, we teach, we exercise, we practice. We do all of those sort of functions in our ministries in one way or the other. Then we ask everyone to go to battle. We ask everyone to go to battle. So think of it this way. The Village Church is our base. The Village Church, if you're Army, it's a post. It's home station. It's our base of operations, is what the Village Church is. And we are asking you to go to battle using this as your base. So what do? We've trained, we've prepared, and now the order is given. Move out. Move out. So what happens when you move out in battle? Guess who you're going to come in contact with? The enemy. So we have now ordered you to go into enemy territory. And one way we like to say that, we're going to draw some fire. We're going to draw fire, right? So here we are. We've prepared, we've trained, we've done the best that we could, and now we're in the battle. All right? And so how are we fighting, though? We're sharing. We're sharing the gospel. We are inviting people to know our God. We are serving everyone. And we're taking fire. Not only that, we are scouting for captives. We are searching for hostages. And we are fighting. We are fighting. So we've done that. We've spent time, how we say we've spent time outside of the wire. We've taken some hits. So what does the base of operations, what does home station now do for us? We return. We get back inside. And we come back inside for support. We come back inside the body for comfort. And some of us come back inside for healing. So all of this activity is what the body is about for one reason, and that reason is to witness. That is our purpose. And guess what? We return to base, we do all of that, we recoup, we reconstitute, and we head out again. And we do this again and again and again. That is what we are here for. This is what we are to do. And this is why we cannot do it without one another. So, some final questions of the morning. Have you ever thought of it this way? And if you haven't, good, please start. And if you have, continue on. Because we need to be thinking of it this way. Are you preparing to fight? Are you preparing to fight? Are you in the fight? And are you talking and walking with others in this fight? Because everything that we've been talking about hinges on who you think you are and what you think you should be doing. And I think they're indisputable. And we believe that all of our ministries here at the Village Church are doing that. And I wish we had time to step through each and every one of them and tell you how our ministry is doing what I just outlined. I wish I did. But just to give you a couple of examples, we talked about Sunday morning Bible study. We've got a Bible study in women's ministry, and we're going to start one in men's ministry this week. Guess what we're doing? We're trying to educate and train for battle. We talked about when we come back in to the body and we need that support. We have community groups. That's what those are for. They're just not to get together and talk about your day at work, even though that's okay, nothing wrong with that. But they are meant for us to come in and come together and talk about what God is doing and what support you need to go back out into the fight. We talked about healing. I think you know what ministry I'm going to describe when it comes to healing here at the Village Church, right? Key ministry. Again, all of our ministries here are designed to be a witness and do what God expects us to do. But I am going to mention one, and I'm going to spend a few more minutes on it, because it's one that is very important, and it's our student ministry. And the reason I'm going to mention this one is because everything that I've talked about is a part of that ministry. For those of you who don't know, we have approximately 60 kids that come into this building, that come to the Village Church every week. It's divided up into what we call the landing, the street crew, and then, as I said earlier this morning, is the street. And these kids come from all walks of life. And these kids need us. There's no other way to say that. We here at the Village have big goals. Big goals. Well, I'm going to share one this morning that we have for the student ministry. Because we want every teenager's name connected to a number. We want every teenager's name connected to a phone number. Why do we want that? Because we want them to have someone that can talk with them and walk with them as they begin to enter adulthood. But guess what? we need you to do that. I get it. Teenagers scare us to death. I understand that. Should you be scared? Probably. Probably. But I was reminded this week because I took over the student ministry a couple of years ago. Guess what? Me? Are you sure? Kevin, are you sure? Yes. And guess what? God changed my heart. God changed my heart. I love those kids. And those kids drive me crazy. Thank you. I do. So I'm just giving a simple example. Yep, I used this as a ask for our student ministry. But I thought it was a very appropriate connection to what we're doing. We are here. We are in the fight, week in and week out. And the current leaders of all of our ministries, we can't do that alone. We've got to come together more so than we have to be able to do what we want to do. At these times, I get reflective. And sometimes I'll say play a game with myself, but it's not a game whatsoever. But in this moment, I says, if Jesus were here, what would he say? What would he say to us? Now, I think most of you know that I believe Jesus to be a coach. And if anybody wants to argue, I won't blow it that loud. If anybody wants to argue with me, I'll be right over there after service. But I would believe Jesus would walk in and he would just go, all eyes on me. All eyes on me. And what he would say is, I want you to believe me. Please believe me. I love you. The Father loves you. The Spirit loves you. And we fight for you every day. We fight for you every day. And I think that we show you that by creating you in our image. And I think we've shown you that by making a way for the Father to call you his son or daughter. Please believe me. I want you to trust me. Please trust me. I want what's best for you. I want you to be fully known and fully loved because you are by me and accepted. I want you to live a life full of joy and peace and purpose. I want you to live a life worth living. And that is why I want you. Yes, I want you. And I want you to rule my creation with me. I want you to reclaim my creation back to me. I want you to love one another. I want you to care for one another. And I want you to be with one another. And don't forget this. I'm not asking you to do this alone. I have conquered sin and death. And I have given you the power through my Spirit to do everything that I have done. So, what are you waiting for? I want you. So, Heavenly Father, this is our prayer. Our prayer is to believe your truths. So, Lord, I just pray that the lies that we accept are gone today, and that these truths will be a part of our being for the rest of our days. So, Lord, I thank you for all of it. And I just ask your favor and blessing in what we want to do here at the Village Church. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.